projects that were selected as part of that. East New York, our study was one of those. A study in the Bronx along the Metro North corridor to look at transit nodes there and growth around those was the second one. And the third one that you may have also seen a report on was on climate resilience that was produced by the department with Howard leading that and Eugenia, who's part of this team as well, working on that. So East New York work started 2 years ago, and my team is here. Corin Manning and Eugenia DiGirolamo are both the project managers, and Winston has been leading this work in East New York on our behalf. Ralph, who's sitting behind them while he was in the Brooklyn office, was also involved. This has really been a team effort. A lot of people at City Planning have been involved. Sarah in her role in coordinating the RPA work, and Howard and urban design. A lot of people can lay credit to the work that has been gone on here. So why East New York? As you know, that many parts of Brooklyn over the last decade have really, transformed and developed in ways that were inconceivable even 10 years ago when I was still a planner in Brooklyn. Even as Brooklyn has grown, transformed, gotten a lot of housing economic development and become sort of the place to be, there are parts of Brooklyn that have lagged behind. And sadly, East New York and Brownsville are both, and many parts of central Brooklyn have lagged behind and have continued to be dogged by the problems of high crime, low education, high rents, and general sort of urban problems. What makes East New York to us really interesting is that very few people realize there are 5 subway lines that actually come to East New York. Do I have that here? Mm-hmm. And a Long Island Railroad. So other than Atlantic Center and downtown Brooklyn, in Brooklyn, this is really the place with the largest mass transit hub. It is also a Long Island hub, and as you can see on this diagram here, it is from Broadway Junction in East New York, you can reach downtown Brooklyn in less than 20 minutes, Lower Manhattan in about 25 minutes, and Midtown in 30 to 40 minutes. This should be the kind of neighborhood that becomes a real thriving neighborhood just by virtue of being accessible to these job centers and to the places where people want to get to. Yet New York, not many people think of this when they think of New York. We only think about the crime and the sort of poverty and urban decline. The other thing that we found in New York, East New York also, is that there is a community that is vibrant, that is multicultural, and that is eager for development, that wants to be partners with the city in taking this neighborhood to the next level. The Cypress Hills LDC is a 25-year-old organization that has been in this community all of that time and has done some great work. And we were fortunate to have them as partners in this exercise, along with other local groups and business groups. There is no bid there right now. We are hoping that that could happen, but there are groups that are doing work in the business district, in the urban gardening, the community garden, and are eager to see this neighborhood be transformed and work with the city. What we were very careful about as we were doing this study was that we did not want a report that would sit on a shelf somewhere. We really wanted to work with the community in making sure things start to happen today. And to that end, you're going to hear from my team here on how we've worked with DOT, with DEP, and others where they had capital projects already going on in the community. And we are working with them to jumpstart those so that some of the streetscape improvement, some of the transit node improvement can start to occur today. We are also trying to bring in SBS to start a discussion about jobs so that this becomes a real comprehensive planning exercise beyond the land use planning that we are very good at doing and we traditionally have been doing. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Corin, who's going to walk you through the proposal, and then we can come back.
Thank you, Purnima. So just to give you a little more background about the East New York community, this might be, some of you might be very familiar with East New York. But for those of you who aren't, a little bit more about the demographics. So while East New York lost about a third of its population in the 1960s and 70s, today the population is about 46,000 as opposed to the historic high in 1960 of 66,000. So the neighborhood has never really come back from that massive population decline that happened in the 60s and 70s. However, the population has been growing in the past decade, and the population growth has actually outpaced that of Brooklyn as a whole. There's been a 12% increase since 2000 in the residential population. So the area is primed for growth in many ways. The population is about 50% Black, 40% Latino, and it is a high poverty area with nearly half of households making less than $25,000 a year. So it's an area with a lot of social needs. As part of our study, we conducted extensive community outreach. We held a wide variety of events, from town halls to visioning sessions, actual walking tours with partner agencies and with community residents to really hear from residents what their vision for the neighborhood was. We also convened an interagency technical advisory panel, working with our fellow city agencies to get their input and also to coordinate a lot of the ongoing work that many agencies are doing in East New York. And one of the key issues that we heard from the neighborhood, above and beyond all others, was housing. The need for more housing, more affordable housing, as well as more choices in housing, a greater variety of housing options. We heard from residents that they wanted to see mixed income housing that would attract young professionals, as well as provide more affordable housing for existing residents. Other priorities that we also heard were for more retail and services. The neighborhood is very underserved by grocery stores, for example. There's only about 2 or 3 full-service grocery stores in the entire neighborhood. This is in a fresh incentive zone. As well, we heard from residents that while there is incredible transit in the neighborhood, it can be very difficult to access transit because of some of the streetscape conditions. For example, crossing Atlantic Avenue can be very challenging and unsafe, and accessing transit around Broadway Junction can also be challenging. There's also a need for more jobs and economic development in the neighborhood, and we also heard that residents wanted their neighborhood to be greener, a more attractive and sustainable neighborhood. So the study area is located here in eastern Brooklyn and really kind of the northern portion of East New York, again, focused around those transit lines. It's about a square mile in size, and it's bounded by Fulton Street on the north, the JZ line, and the Pitkin Avenue on the south along the AC. And also includes this major transit node at Broadway Junction with the AC, JZ, and L, as well as the regional Long Island Railroad connection, one of only 3 regional rail stations in all of Brooklyn. We divided the study area into 3 sub-areas based on their unique land use characteristics and the different needs that each of these areas had. East New York and Cypress Hills, which is really east of Pennsylvania Avenue, is really the residential heart of this area. This is where we see very strong residential blocks bounded by those commercial corridors of Pitkin, Atlantic, and Fulton. And then there's an industrial and business area in the southwest portion of our study area. This is mostly commercial and semi-industrial uses, not very many residential uses in this area. And then Broadway Junction, which is that major transit hub. So East New York and Cypress Hills, as I mentioned, is largely residential, bounded by the commercial corridors, mixed-use corridors along Fulton, Atlantic, and Pitkin. Along Atlantic, it's largely zoned M1 and C8, so for auto-oriented and industrial uses. Neither of these zoning designations permit any new residential uses along Atlantic Avenue. The remainder of the area is very low-density residential, R5 zoning, with local retail overlays along Pitkin and Fulton. So to give you a little bit of the sense of the landscape of East New York, this is Atlantic Avenue. Atlantic has a number of very underutilized properties along the street. And it's mostly auto-oriented uses such as gas stations, car washes, auto repair shops, as well as some semi-industrial uses such as storage centers. And this is just what's permitted by the current zoning along the avenue, and often the current zoning does not match the uses that we're seeing. Along Pitkin Avenue, which is a transit corridor with the AC running below ground, this used to be a very thriving commercial corridor. Currently, the corridor is really struggling and underperforming commercially. Most of what we see in terms of new development along the corridor is residential uses, and we've also seen a lot of ground floor spaces which were formerly commercial converted to residential uses, which really disrupts the commercial continuity of the corridor. Fulton Street is in many ways the commercial heart of East New York. It's a fairly active retail corridor with a lot of small-scale retail uses, such as delis, salons, laundromats, etc. There is, though, a fairly high number of vacancies along the corridor and some auto-oriented uses towards the western portion of the street. And then in the middle of the area, there's thriving residential areas with mostly detached, semi-detached houses, some historic row houses, and small apartment buildings, 2 to 3 story walk-up buildings. So the patterns that we see in this area are a preponderance of underutilized land, especially along Atlantic Avenue, and then the low-density zoning really restricts the ability to build substantial quantities of housing in this area, particularly makes it challenging to develop any quantity of affordable housing. There are active retail corridors, such as Fulton Street, but there's also a need for more retail diversity, and those corridors have much room to be strengthened. And then there's stable residential blocks that we think is a strength that can be built on to promote more contextual residential uses in those areas. So based on what we heard from the community, as well as our own analysis, we developed a planning framework for this area that will promote growth along the transit corridors and preserve the residential character of those existing residential blocks. We think Atlantic Avenue has the greatest potential for growth. This is a 120-foot wide corridor with a number of strategic sites that could be redeveloped on a large scale with housing as well as economic development and commercial uses. Pitkin and Fulton have potential for more mixed-use development at a higher density than is currently allowed, with housing and retail uses at the ground floor to capitalize on that existing transit on those corridors. And then in the existing residential blocks, we think there's ways to preserve the character through contextual zoning. As well, we want to focus on enhancing connectivity through the neighborhood, particularly along Atlantic Avenue, which currently really divides the neighborhood north and south. There's a lot of room for streetscape improvements along Atlantic, and we've been working closely with DOT on those improvements. And DOT as well has prioritized Atlantic Avenue throughout Brooklyn as a corridor for improvements and reduced speeds to enhance pedestrian safety. Atlantic Avenue, as I mentioned, has a number of strategic sites that we, as well as our community partner, Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, have identified for future redevelopment. The M&T Bank, which is at the corner of Pennsylvania and Atlantic, is currently vacant building. The Arlington Village here on Atlantic is a garden apartment development that's currently half occupied and in a very poor state of repair, which could hold potential for redevelopment in the future. And then the former Chloe food processing plant here at Atlantic and Euclid is a former manufacturing facility that has closed and actually since then has burned down. So this is a very large-scale site which along with this EDC-owned property that is adjacent is over 300,000 square feet of potential redevelopment. So we developed some sketches to give community residents a sense of how the land use changes that we're discussing might change the look of their neighborhood. This is Atlantic Avenue at Warwick Street today, so towards the center of Atlantic Avenue. And this is a sketch showing long-term land use changes that would bring mixed income development with substantial quantities of housing, mixed income housing that would include affordable housing to the area. With a greater residential population, this would also catalyze the market for retail uses at the ground floor and bring more commercial uses to the area. And this also depicts the type of streetscape changes that would really help turn Atlantic Avenue into more of an urban boulevard that is a pedestrian-friendly streetscape that also then supports the ground floor retail uses. And we've shared this vision with the community and got really fantastic feedback on this type of vision for their neighborhood. This is another example of the types of changes we could see in East New York. This is Pitkin Avenue at Berryman Street today. This is a site here at Pitkin and Berryman that is actually currently being redeveloped by Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation. This was a small rezoning that was actually approved by the commission last year. It was rezoned to R7A to incentivize a 6-story affordable housing development that will provide affordable housing as well as retail on the ground floor. And this rezoning was sort of a test case for the type of zoning and the type of development that we hope to see along Pitkin Avenue in the future that an area-wide rezoning could catalyze. And this is a sketch showing how long-term area-wide rezoning could change Pitkin Avenue to bring more residential development as well as more new commercial uses along this corridor. So we also looked at the industrial and business area. And in this area, which is part of an industrial business zone and currently zoned for manufacturing uses, that zoning is protected by city policies. So while we didn't develop very strong land use recommendations, we wanted to look at how this area functions with the surrounding communities, how it can sometimes act as a barrier between the surrounding communities, so how connectivity improvements could help enhance this area's connections to the surrounding neighborhoods and make the area a more attractive and desirable place for businesses and for workers. Go back. So the types of land uses that we see in the industrial area, while we see some traditional manufacturing, it's mostly semi-industrial uses. Over half of the land use is semi-industrial, which is often self-storage and open-air bus parking are very common uses. There's also been a growth in the number of homeless shelters in the area, particularly the northern portion of the industrial areas where we see a lot of former loft buildings being converted to homeless shelters. And these land use patterns are also reflected in the employment trends in the industrial and business area. While employment has actually grown in recent years, it has declined in manufacturing. The growth we see is in transportation and warehousing, and particularly in healthcare and social assistance, as those social service organizations have moved into the area. So here you can see. Yes.
That's East New York or all IBZ employment?
This is the East New York IBZ. Just the IBZ. So as I mentioned, there's some major connectivity challenges with the industrial and business area because of its location here. It is quite close to Broadway Junction, where there is, which is a major transit hub. However, the Atlantic Avenue Viaduct, which runs along Atlantic Avenue for 10 blocks, this really cuts off connectivity between Broadway Junction and the industrial area. Atlantic Avenue essentially forms a wall here that's inaccessible for pedestrians to cross. Here you see the East New York Avenue going under the Atlantic Avenue Viaduct. The only way to cross Atlantic Avenue here is through an underpass at the Long Island Railroad Station. It's very poorly lit and very poor state of repair. Many residents avoid this underpass, so this presents another major barrier for crossing between Broadway Junction and the industrial area. There is a MTA-owned property in the northern portion of the industrial area. This is a vacant substation, and we think this property holds a lot of potential for creating a new activity node in the industrial area, just adjacent to Broadway Junction. This is the site again. This is a unused rail spur that it spans over Atlantic Avenue here. And we think this substation could be adaptively reused as a business center or other uses that support businesses in the industrial area, bring visitors to the area, and serve as a gateway to the industrial area. Again, this is located just adjacent to the Long Island Railroad Station and to Broadway Junction. As well, we think there's potential to create a secondary pedestrian connection between Broadway Junction and the industrial area by rehabilitating that unused rail spur over Atlantic, which would connect from a future business center across Atlantic Avenue and would provide a safe and attractive way for residents and visitors to navigate between Broadway Junction and the industrial area. Now, Eugenia is going to walk you through some of our recommendations for Broadway Junction.
Thank you, Corin. Good afternoon, everyone. As Corin said, I would just like to walk you through some of the recommendations for Broadway Junction, which is the area in the northwest of our study area. And as you can see from this aerial, it is located at the center of several different neighborhoods. You have Bushwick to the north, Cypress Hills and East New York to the east, of course, that industrial area to the south, and Brownsville and Ocean Hill to the west. But even though it's so centrally located, none of these neighborhoods really feels like it's part of their neighborhood today, and really altogether just avoid this area. And something that I would like to point out that you can see from this aerial is also the amount of infrastructure that is actually very visible here and very little development. I just would like to walk you through all the infrastructure at Broadway Junction. There's a freight tunnel, which is the Bay Ridge line, that really cuts Broadway Junction north to south and runs below grade. Because of that, the LIRR needs to run at grade here. And again, because of that, Atlantic Avenue needs to run elevated on a viaduct for about 10 blocks, and you can see it here, and really dividing the IBZ and Brownsville from Broadway Junction. And then East New York Avenue cuts at an angle as well. And that's that photo that Corin just showed you about all that spaghetti strap of all the infrastructure. So it's really hard for pedestrians to go from one side to the other. And then we have all of the subway lines. We have 3 subway lines that cross here. Some are elevated, like the L and the JZ, and some are below grade, like the A and the C. And all of this is really limiting development at Broadway Junction. On top of that, we have a very big site that houses the MTA bus depot and train yard to the north, really squeezing in Broadway Junction between that Atlantic Avenue viaduct and this train yard. But something that we're really fascinated by, that I think it's really the opportunity here, is these 3 transit nodes. You have Broadway Junction with the 5 subway lines. You have this to the south, which is the Atlantic Avenue L station and the East New York LIRR station, and then you have another node here with the Alabama Avenue station and something that we've been calling a bus hub at the intersection of Fulton Street and Broadway, where 6 bus lines actually meet. So the transit here, it's really the key of Broadway Junction, but what we've heard from the community is that they use Broadway Junction just to transfer from one line to the other. They really don't come to Broadway Junction, because there's really nothing here, there's nowhere to go to. So there's no reason to just get off the subway. These are some images of what Broadway Junction looks like at grade. There's a lot of elevated infrastructure that, of course, is limiting development here. Everywhere else, the streetscape is really uninvited. The community has told us that they're really scared to walk from one subway station to the other. This image here, you can see there's Broadway Junction in the background. The LIRR station is just at our backs. It's only 2 blocks to walk, but people just don't want to do it because it's really scary. There's no active uses. The streetscape is really bare, so they just don't do it. And then what I would like to point out, to the west of Broadway Junction, we have some pockets of established residential areas that are currently zoned for manufacturing, but they're really intact, and they're more part of the Ocean Hill portion of the neighborhood at Broadway Junction. And this is just a recap of all the things that we've learned from the community about Broadway Junction. As I said, there's really no reason to go there because there's nowhere to go to. And as I said, the community just avoids it altogether. But we asked them what would they see at Broadway Junction, if there's any potential for anything. And they really would like to capitalize on the transit that is already existing. They would like to see more restaurants, more shops, a movie theater, somewhere where they can go to. And they really would like to make Broadway Junction a destination, not only for the borough, but for the entire region. So as you can see, there are several major corridors in Brooklyn that actually cross at Broadway Junction. You have Broadway, Fulton Street, and Atlantic Avenue, and they all converge here at Broadway Junction. So what we would like to see is really knitting those neighborhoods that are around Broadway Junction back at Broadway Junction. We have the residential area to the west that I just showed you earlier. That's, as I said, currently zoned for manufacturing. That could be rezoned. And then a mixed-use edge to the east that actually could connect back to Broadway and Fulton and Pennsylvania Avenue with a mix of uses and some residential as well. Then we have a central open space that is currently under the tracks of the L subway line that it's owned by the MTA and I would say lightly used by the MTA. But it's really central and really connects the LIR station to Broadway Junction. And then we have the core blocks. This is where all the corridors actually meet, and it's bounded by all the transit access. And right now, as you can see from the photo down here, there's really not a lot of development. There's really nothing there. And then we, of course, would like to improve pedestrian connectivity throughout Broadway Junction back to the neighborhoods around it. So just to focus on something that could happen in the short term, we took a look at this central open space, and we really think we could create something for the community, a public space for the community. So we looked at this space under the L tracks. You can see in the back, this is the LIR station entrance. To our backs is Broadway Junction. And we think that this space has a lot of potential. It's really a great urban room that could be rethought with temporary uses, maybe some pop-up markets, street fairs that could start attracting the community to Broadway Junction. It could really change the perception of Broadway Junction in the mind of the community. So then we went and looked at the core blocks highlighted here in purple. And these blocks, as though we think that they have a great potential, we do understand that there's a lot that needs to happen for some of this vision to happen, but we really think that these blocks have the potential to attract regional skill development and really transform this transit hub into a regional destination, an economic center that could provide all those services the community has been asking for, but also jobs and education. Again, we understand that this can't really happen with just the rezoning. It would need to have a lot of efforts put towards making this vision happen, but we wanted to look at this because of the great potential that it has. So again, we asked the community, what type of uses would you like to see here? And maybe something like a college campus or some government offices that could bring job, but also bring people to Broadway Junction, as well as community facilities, services, movie theaters, and shops, somewhere to go to, which is currently lacking in the neighborhood. So what we did through this process, this was really eye-opening for both us and the community. We started looking at those uses, trying to understand how much space do they actually need. So we compared footprints of existing uses, and we compared them with Broadway Junction. So at the top, you have Magic Johnson Movie Theater in Harlem. It could actually fit. This is the actual footprint of the building. It could actually fit at Broadway Junction. Same with the U.S. Courthouse in downtown Brooklyn. You would have to combine 2 blocks, but the footprint could actually fit here. And then we went even bigger. We looked at a college campus, Medgar Evers in Brooklyn, and it's a very urban campus with different buildings and on different lots, and it actually fits here at Broadway Junction. And then we looked at Atlantic Terminal and Atlantic Center in Brooklyn. And this was really where we understood the great potential of Broadway Junction. It actually fits here. You would have to combine several lots or close streets that actually face walls, so really don't lead you anywhere. But the space is actually there, and the infrastructure is already in place. So this is that bus hub that I showed you just earlier, where Broadway and Fulton Street meet. Currently, there's no development other than this diner that is open 24/7, very well used. But other than that, there's not much more. This is where 6 subway lines actually meet. There's the Jay-Z stop that stops here. People used it to get to the bus, but there's nothing else other than that. So we tried to develop this vision, listening to what the community has to say and trying to understand what type of development could come to Broadway Junction, really to create this regional destination with shops, movie theater, educational development, and also businesses. We do understand, as I said, that this is a long-term vision for the area. There needs to be a coordination with MTA, which has a lot of properties here in the area, and we started a conversation with them already. Site assemblage will be necessary to house some of these types of development that we're looking at. There needs to be private and public investment, and also investments in the streetscape and transportation infrastructure to make all of this happen. And actually this week, the ULI, the Urban Land Institute, convened a technical panel who would look at Broadway Junction to try to understand how these strategies could be implemented, or try to understand what could actually come to Broadway Junction and what would need to happen for this to become a reality. So now I'll leave it to Winston, who will walk you through the planning framework and some of our next steps.
All right, thank you. So this is our complete planning framework that we developed in a comprehensive fashion. You can see in the center area, East New York and Cypress Hills, the higher density growth along Atlantic Avenue corridors, along Pitkin and Fulton Street for mixed growth, mixed-use growth. In the interior core residential blocks, preservation as well as allowing contextual infill development. In the economic development area, in the industrial and business area, to further the efforts today by EDC and the LDC of East New York to grow businesses there and make it more accessible. And then, as Eugenia just went through, the Broadway Junction as a regional destination for Brooklyn and for the neighborhood. So East New York is actually the first announced area of study as part of Mayor de Blasio's Housing New York plan to build or preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing. We've already achieved some early results, aside from the announcement by the mayor and the chair of the commission. We will need to do a rezoning and other land use actions in order to put this plan into motion and to actually get the results that we wish, including retail and affordable housing and local jobs. We want to leverage city investments in this community and have started to do so, as Purnima and Corin have mentioned, with the work of and the help of DOT. And we want to continue our interagency work. Already, a former council member here contributed $2 million towards streetscape and pedestrian improvements that DOT is currently working on. The agency, together with the Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, applied for BOA grant, and we were proud that we received the largest such grant in New York State for $1 million to vision and develop proposals and models for the strategic sites along Atlantic Avenue. Eugenia mentioned we have the ULI TAP going on this week, and we've also been, for Broadway Junction, the Center for the Under the Elevated Arts Project by Design for Public Space. Our next steps are to continue with our community-based ground-up planning work. We will work with the local community and other stakeholders, as well as city agencies, to identify the needed land use actions in order to implement this plan. We are also going to coordinate with them, with city agencies and public agencies, the MTA included, and SBS, and EDC, to bring their investments to bear here, to focus them on this community, and to bring this vision to reality. You already know from previous presentations that city planning and HPD are working together on a new inclusionary housing program. We've already met with SBS on coordinating their work on retail and job development here. EDC, we've had continuing conversations with them about the industrial and business area, and obviously there have been continuing discussions with the MTA about Broadway Junction and transit and bus service here. So finally, this is a shared vision for resurgent East New York. It is overseen by the department and involved community residents, organizations, and stakeholders, as well as fellow public agencies. And these recommendations, we believe, will transform East New York into a more vibrant and safe community and fulfill Mayor de Blasio's goal for fostering diverse and livable neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Winston, to Purnima, and to the entire Corin, entire Brooklyn office. It was really a terrific piece of work. If there are any questions, I'm sure Purnima et al. Would be happy to answer them. Ken.
Well, thank you. A very thoughtful and provocative presentation. In the area of jobs, aside from retail, which obviously would provide some jobs, what other thought or wider set of thoughts has been given to job creation, given the pre-existing manufacturing area that's there? Any thoughts to the kind of advanced manufacturing that you see going on in Brooklyn Navy Yard, for instance, as perhaps a job hub there?
So we are in conversation with EDC on the job creation part of this this project. As you saw in the statistics that Corin presented, the job growth here has, even though the IBZ has gained jobs, they have not been in manufacturing. There have been some gains in the transportation and infrastructure areas. This is not an easy challenge or an easy area to
Indeed.
sort of think about when you think about the newer technologies and the newer industries that are coming to Brooklyn. EDC and CHLDC last year put out an RFP for the Chloe Foods site with that intention to try to sort of get some of these new users to come. So far, they have not been successful. We think that the job strategy here really would benefit as this area improves. I think currently, as you saw, getting to and from this IBZ by mass transit is a real problem, even though you have this real center of sort of all these subways coming together. You cannot really walk to it that easily. So I think we, in this department, we are not sort of the strategists for the job creation as much as some of our sister agencies are. And we are talking to them. We are talking to SBS. We are talking to EDC. And we will look at everything from zoning changes to other kinds of incentives to marketing the area better, to generally improving this area to make people aware of the sites that are here as well. So I think the ULI TAP, we hope, would be also helpful. And
Ms. Battaglia.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations.
thank you.
I've often talked about East New York. I could almost sum up my feelings in the word bravo. It is the perfect place to devise a strategic plan, particularly with the new administration and what the new administration is trying to achieve and an interagency coordination. There could not be a better location, a location that offers more opportunity. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I believe it was, well, one of you were all great, discussed site assemblages, which, there are a lot of sites there that I'm aware of. And my first question would be, are these sites that we're referring to mostly empty? I have a couple of questions. Do you want me to just... the other is, I believe it was Winston, but I'm not sure, discuss the mixed-use growth on Pitkin and Fulton. Would that be through residential development as well? Because those two streets sorely need development. I agree with the Atlantic Avenue, that's the place for density, and Broadway Junction, no one in their right mind would get off at that train station right now. So that is something that, and it will take time and coordination and private investment. So I guess really, I wanted to talk about the site assemblages. I already think I got my answer to Fulton and Pitkin. I'm stunned that Arlington Village has so much of a vacancy rate, and I just maybe want to ask why. I understand the area. I mean, I wasn't surprised to hear that almost half the people live below the poverty level. I was a little bit shocked to see that only 11% of the population graduate college. I think at the end of the day, when this plan is devised, we will see those numbers change, and wherever we all are in space and time, we'll be very proud. But why is Arlington Village so underutilized?
It's not something that we have a good answer to. I think it's privately owned, and the area has just been, that development has been neglected over a long period of time. This is not a recent trend. It's something that has been happening for the last 2 decades at least, if not more. And the site, part of it is also just that the zoning here is so low that the private market activity is just non-existent in terms of consolidating sites or thinking about doing large-scale development. That's why the Pitkin Avenue project that, you all approved last year, that CHLDC had applied for, we think is really sort of the direction to go here. And hopefully as that gets constructed, it'll set some kind of a marker there for people to see what is possible. And so to that question, both Pitkin and Fulton Avenue, we envision as mixed-use corridors with residential and substantial affordable housing on both corridors with retail on the ground floors.
agree with you
I mean, they're next to subway corridors, and that's
And
exactly.
the assemblages, they are mostly vacant sites right now?
So the assemblages that you heard about were in the context only of Broadway Junction that we were talking about. We were not talking about the assemblages elsewhere, other than the Chloe Foods site, which is next to an EDC site. But for the most part, the assemblage question was really, how do you get Broadway Junction sites to become more developable? What would it take? And that was an exercise based on the examples that we were looking at. And it was really, it started out was as, is it even feasible to think about Broadway Junction as a site for any of these kinds of developments? And as we started putting those footprints on these sites, it became apparent pretty quickly that yes, you could, if there was the political will, the will on the part of the development community, the local community, that if everyone wanted to see this area transformed, there are strategies that can lead to that.
Sure. It was very impressive to see the footprints could accommodate
Exactly.
the school, and other uses. And finally, although I'm hesitant to make a little bit of a political statement here, but as we consider the Woodward site in Ridgewood, we realize that manufacturing, there really is not an incentive for manufacturing anymore in these areas. And I'm happy to see that at least in the Broadway Junction area and the industrial area in East New York, that there's going to be developed a vision that takes into account that those uses are just not very viable in that area anymore. So thank you.
Michelle Delauz.
Hi, Fernand, congratulations,
Thank you.
and great to hear from the whole team. I think this is a pretty incredible plan that's been put together, and obviously as it moves forward, it'll be exciting to see how all the different parts of the community come together to participate. I think it raises a number of policy issues, not just as it relates to East New York, but really that need to be considered broadly. You mentioned a number of things in the process that impact on policy, whether it's changing the zoning to increase economic development, but really where is that economic development going? Is it going to benefit the existing local community, or is it going to bring in folks from outside, or some mix thereof? I mean, especially with the demographic information that was shared, ensuring that any economic development activity is linked to workforce development activity is critical. And as you said, your partners at EDC, on SBS, and quite honestly, DYCD, because of adult education and literacy pieces, are are really critical in terms of bringing everybody together. The BOA program was mentioned. Governor defunded the BOA program, and we're advocating for, advocates around the state are advocating for that program to come together. And really, this is a critical example of how that investment can really lead, to synergies and really a comprehensive vision. IBZ, I don't know where it ended up in the city's budget, but that IBZs are hanging by a thread in general, and I think there's really an importance. This highlights the importance of having a strong IBZ partner in order to help realize this vision. And then I of course am always concerned about how the old mixes with the new, and whether or not there's any consideration in the framework to anti-displacement provisions, because obviously as this vision rolls out, increased density could put a significant strain in terms of increasing rents in an area of the city that remains quite affordable. And we don't want to create a problem someplace else, much less disrupt individuals' lives. And then, last but not least, there's been a significant investment in this process, both in time and in terms of money over the last several years to make this vision a reality. And so to the extent that we want to ensure that this is a template for other rezonings moving forward, I wonder how we do that on a smaller budget and a tighter time frame. Because I think it can be a template, but we have to draw from it what's reasonable and replicable. So, but other than great work.
Thank you.
And I would just like to comment on the last point that Ms. Delauz raised, which is the enormous investment that was put into this project into the work so far over the past 2 years? 2 years, really. And the resources that the department had to do this work. And the result to date is apparent when investment like this is made in a community, that one can come up with a vision that can be implemented with community support. And it's really a challenge for the department going forward, given the fact that we won't have these resources in every neighborhood, albeit fortunately getting additional resources in this upcoming budget, but it really will be a major challenge to the department staff to meet the standard that the work in East New York so far has established. And if we can meet that standard, I think that the prospects for neighborhood revitalization, embracing increased density in the city in a really positive way will be very great indeed. But that's why we say that this is a template, and we very much hope that we will be able to maintain this standard and achieve this standard in our future endeavors. The Brooklyn office has created a high bar for everybody else. Ms. Levin.
So that's the perfect lead-in for my question is, obviously there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done by a lot of different agencies to get this off the shelf and on the ground. What are the next steps, and what's the anticipated timetable? Will the rezoning happen relatively quickly, or is there a push to get some of the pedestrian infrastructure invested in? And it's like, it's kind of a push-me-pull-you process, I
Right.
imagine.
So our hope is to move a number of these things in parallel. So we are working to develop a zoning proposal based on the framework that we've been discussing with the community. We'll be working on that over the summer, and our hope is to go back to the community in the fall with a real zoning proposal and start soliciting input. And hopefully, having done all the work, it would not take that long for us to come up with a zoning proposal that we can start then preparing an application on. In parallel to that, SBS is actually going to work with us in coming and talking about workforce training and as we look at retail corridors, what can be done to strengthen them, and to also make sure that people who are there today are part of this process as we start to look at transforming it into something better. The DOT work is continuing. That we continue to talk to them. They have a study ongoing on the Atlantic Avenue corridor that we are working jointly on. They're also looking at the Broadway Junction area for improvements to the bus transit there and how people go from there to the rest of the neighborhood. So a lot of this work will continue to happen as we go through the process of putting our application together. We're also working with DEP to look at their green infrastructure proposal. This is one of the areas that they have identified as well. So our hope is to bring in whatever agencies we need to make sure that we can address as many of these issues as possible.
Oh, thank you so much to Purnima and to the entire Brooklyn office for this really fine piece of work. And I just want to make one final point, which I think has been implicit, if not explicit, which is that this is a good example of how planning is not simply zoning, and zoning is a product of actually good planning. It is not planning in and of itself. And this endeavor really has required the cooperation of a host of other city agencies and the coordination of those agencies in a mutually with a mutually agreed upon goal, and that will also be a hallmark of our other community planning efforts in the future, and the importance, as we've stated in the past, of being able to coordinate the city's capital budget as well to assure that needed improvements come to neighborhoods that have embraced the goal of greater vibrancy and enhanced density. And so this will be an example for many, many of the strategies that we seek to employ over the years to come. So thank you all.
The regular scheduled program. There's a couple more.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a City Planning Commission review session. Today is Monday, June 23rd, and a quorum is present. Let's begin with item number 1. It's proposed renewal of a previously approved City Planning Commission authorization and special permit to facilitate mixed-use development along the waterfront in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And our presenter is Syed from the Brooklyn office. It's item number 1, page 1.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application request for the renewal of a special permit and authorization for a period of 3 years pursuant to Section 1143. The special permit and authorization were approved by the City Council on March 2nd, 2009 to facilitate a mixed-use development of 640 dwelling units. The site is located at 155 West Street in the Greenpoint section of Community District 1, Brooklyn. The previously approved special permit received one waiver to exceed the maximum height requirements in an R6 district. That building over there. On the Greenpoint waterfront, the maximum building height in an R8 district is 300 feet. Due to the constraints posed by an existing sewer easement on the site, the applicant received a height waiver allowing a single tower to project 92 feet above the maximum height of 300 feet. The sewer is right here, the sewer easement, and that poses constraints on what could be developed there and how it could be developed. The applicant also received authorization for 3 modifications to the standards for the waterfront public access area. These modifications provided relief from the specific requirements of minimum planted area requirement, minimum tree planting requirement, and minimum buffer zone requirement. The commission found that the special permit waiver for height and modifications to the design standards of the waterfront public access area received by the applicant would result in a design that is functionally equal or superior to the design prescribed by the strict adherence to the zoning. In 2009, the special permit and authorization were approved by the City Planning Commission in order to facilitate a mixed-use development of 640 dwelling units. The proposed development would utilize the inclusionary housing program and provide 140 units of affordable housing. 140 dwelling units of affordable housing would make up 20% of the floor area and approximately 22% of the dwelling units. The proposed development would also have 19,000 square feet of ground retail, 3,800 square feet of community facility area, and approximately 22,000 square feet of publicly accessible waterfront open space, which is shown here. The proposed development would consist of a 39-story mixed-use, 39-story building along the East River waterfront, which is shown here, a 5-story mid-block building, and a 6-story building front on West Street. The proposed project site on the East River waterfront, bounded by Huron Street to the north and India Street to the south, is currently occupied by 3 1- and 2-story vacant buildings. The zoning lot is roughly 600 feet deep and 200 feet wide, with a total lot area of 120,000 square feet above the bulkhead line. The project site is mapped with R6 and R8 residential districts with a 150-foot deep C2 pole overlay along West Street. The existing land uses along the waterfront are warehouses and vehicle storage uses. Across West Street to the east of the project site is a mixture of 1- and 3-story light industrial and commercial uses and medium-density 2- and 6-story residential buildings. The recently approved 19-acre Greenpoint Landing Development Project is located approximately 1 block to the north of the site. Community Board 1 held a public hearing on this item on June 10 and approved the application by a vote of 14 in favor, 8 opposed, and 3 abstaining. The market conditions have prevented the mixed-use development to move forward, and the applicant is seeking a 3-year renewal of their special permit and authorization. The applicant states in their discussion of findings that there has been no unanticipated development in the area. Neither the project site nor its contacts have changed, and the project continues to meet all the findings required by the original grants of the special permit and authorization. A special permit and authorization granted by the City Planning Commission may be renewed for 2 additional terms of 3 years, provided that the Commission finds that the facts upon which the authorization and special permit were granted have not substantially changed. Applicant's statement of findings is in the briefing package. If you have questions.
Thank you. Mr. Cirillo.
I don't usually ask questions like this because I realize that in the world there's always people who agree with something and people who don't, especially in the context of the community board. But in this one, the reason I'm going to ask this question is because when you look at the last round, the community board's public hearing resulted in, 37-2 in favor of the original application. And here we are really just basically renewing, or being asked to renew that without any real change in any of the circumstances. And yet the vote is, when you look at the number of people who attended the vote, it's really very close in terms of the change in support seems to have shifted somewhat. And I wondered if there's any backstory here that could just give us a sense of why the community seems to have gone from an overwhelming level of support to at least in terms of the numbers,
The
perhaps,
yeah.
perhaps not such a level of support any longer.
The people who voted no would have preferred the affordable units integrated with the market rate units in the development.
Okay.
And the development provides all of the affordable units in this 6-story building,
Okay.
which fronts on West Street, and it is a separate building. And by putting, at that time, that was the program, IZ program, by putting them separately in a building, it also allows them to get low-income housing credits and other, they can benefit from other programs. So right now, it is, we are expecting and asking the applicants to integrate affordable units with the market rate. But when it was approved, it was a different, in future.
In future.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Pataglia.
So
And Ms.
Syed.
Levin.
So will they integrate? We are asking them to. We're going to be asked to vote on a
Not on this one.
renewal.
This project is shovel-ready. They cannot go back and redesign the whole project. They are securing their financing and about to pull permits. So for them to redesign and integrate affordable with the market rate would take a very long time and jeopardize this project.
Because of the financing.
Go ahead.
The not-for-profit sponsor of the housing here is North Brooklyn Development Corporation. They have submitted a letter, had submitted a letter of support to the community board that is, I believe, in your package.
Yeah.
And they explained that if they had their druthers and do it over again, they would integrate, they would ask for the affordable housing units to be integrated in the development. But they recognize that it can't be for the reasons that Syed just said. They've applied for low-income tax credits and other housing programs, affordable housing programs, that require a separate building. And they are ready to go. And that's the message of North Brooklyn is that, look, these are 140 units. We polled our residents. We asked them, what do you need? What would you prefer, either now or integrate in the future? And they said, we'd
Now.
rather have them
I would
now.
agree. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ms. Levin.
Well, so just a technical question related to that. I realized that this was approved in March or so of 2009, and the inclusionary housing rules were overhauled in July. And included in the revamped inclusionary housing rules was the distribution requirement, the 65% distribution requirement. So my question is, at what point do those inclusionary housing rules apply to this project? Do they already have approval from HPD of an inclusionary housing plan that approves this offsite, or is HPD still in the mix here?
So the 65% integration rule that you're talking about occurs when you provide the affordable housing in the same building as the market rate building. This is a separate
So
building.
this
This
is
is considered
another one of those
off-site,
where it
on-site.
looks like one project, but it's actually 3 projects.
Two projects, two separate, yeah. That's, and this has to go to HPD.
It has not
They
yet,
have a
They don't yet have approvals. They're going to go to HPD, and, HPD is going to work with the developer at that point to ensure that the affordable component of this is, fiscally strong and can be affordable for the term of the project.
I think that there are two different.
Yeah.
One is that, as Purnima says, that the distribution rules apply within the same building, and this is 2 buildings. And as I had said at the outset, this is really a situation where financing is in place. They have their financial structure, and they're ready to go. I think that they still do have to go to HPD, but HPD's primary interest here is, in this situation, is to make sure that the affordable component is viable and remains viable permanently. And that's the agreement that HPD still has to work out with the developer without undermining the financing which is underway now. So Would we possibly view this project differently if it was coming before us de novo today? We might. But I think the issue here is, A, our findings for renewing the permit are pretty limited, and B, given the circumstances of this particular development and the opportunity we have here to get both housing generally and affordable housing, we would not want to let that slip.
Yeah, well, I won't belabor it, and I'll certainly vote in, I favor approving this renewal, but, we've had a number of projects over the last, 3, 5, so forth years, where developers will stretch to create separate buildings when there really aren't separate buildings. And I've never liked that approach, and I hope that in this new administration, we institutionally don't like that approach, because it's not right. Inclusionary housing is supposed to be inclusive. This is exclusive.
Any other questions regarding this? Ms. Deluz?
On that point, just, I certainly, that is certainly the spirit of inclusionary housing. There are definitely some reasons, though, sometimes to separate. Not that we can have a conversation about that later. I'm just wondering if you all know, when this was first approved, whether or not the Greenpoint Landing project was contemplated as part of the EIS. And I'm just wondering, now that there's a different picture about what's going on in terms of the overall impact in the neighborhood, about whether or not that was fully considered.
They were both contemplated. They were both part of the larger Greenpoint Williamsburg rezoning. So the actions that you had in front of you related to the Greenpoint Landing project were really getting the affordable component ahead of the rest of the proposal, with some swap with the city land. So they were both fully analyzed. And again, in this case, the project was analyzed. The special permits have to do with the bulk, not with the FAR or the density of the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Cantor?
Question, please. Is it understood that the affordable house, what is the schedule of affordable versus high-rise?
The
Construction schedule?
affordable housing, we believe, would be the first part of this project. That would happen ahead of the market rate.
Okay.
East to west.
Are they conditioned? In
Their
terms of occupancy?
TCOs for the market rate are conditioned on the
Good, thank you.
affordable component being complete. And also, to clarify, the developer has told us that although they are separate buildings, both the affordable building and the lower rise component of the market rate buildings will be treated exactly the same. They look the same, and they'll be built to the same.
Fixtures as well?
Fixtures as well, we can check on that one.
Not go there.
Yeah, they have said that, yes.
Yes,
And
good.
they have also a more enhanced open space in the center as a courtyard. They have a community room in the affordable piece. So they've really tried to provide all of the amenities in the affordable building that would.
I think it's interesting what you're saying with respect to the fixtures, in the sense that we look for that certainly in the high-rise. And now we have standalone affordable housing with effectively upgraded fixtures. And I guess the numbers work.
I guess it's comparable to the standalone low-rise market rate that they have next to it.
But it's interesting that they can effectively
Right.
upgrade the quality of the fixtures in the affordable housing.
Yes.
Mr. Knuckles?
I just had a quick question on the process. The council review, in this case, was that based on the modification of the waterfront text or the visual corridor requirements, or was it a call-up? How was the council review triggered in this case?
The special permits go to them, because this was a special permit for a height
of
and
right?
bulk waiver.
As of right? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Just wondering. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, can I have an assent by show of hands to send an approval letter to DOB on this? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's now move to item number 2. Syed is also our presenter. It's a similar action, proposed renewal of an authorization and a special permit previously approved by the City Planning Commission to facilitate mixed-use development, including affordable housing, along the waterfront in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. This is item number 2, page 28.
This is also a special permit renewal in Community District 1. The applicant requests the first renewal of a special permit and authorization for a period of 3 years pursuant to Section 1143. The site is located at 470 Kent Avenue at the corner of Kent and Division in Community District 1, Brooklyn. The special permit was approved by the City Council on April 14, 2010. In addition to the special permit and authorization, there were 3 other land use actions. A zoning map amendment from M31 to R73 and R73C2-4. A zoning text amendment to designate the project site as inclusionary housing designated area, and a chairperson certification. These actions facilitate the proposed mixed-use development of approximately 800 dwelling units with 160 units of affordable housing, 29,000 square feet, and 29,000 square feet of commercial and community facility open space at the project site. The previously approved special permit received 5 modification waivers for heights, setbacks, floor plate sizes, maximum wall length facing the shoreline, and the requirements of the penthouse rule. The special permit waivers received by the applicant allowed the relocation of bulk away from the waterfront esplanade and from Kent Avenue, thus creating a site plan that allows larger private open space with greater light and air and visual access to the water. The applicant also received an authorization for 13 modifications to the design standards of the waterfront public access area and visual corridor. The modifications to the design standards provided relief from the specific requirements related to obstruction in visual corridors, the buffer zone, circulation path, seating location, pedestrian circulation, plantings and trees, supplemental public access area dimensions, seating along circulation path, trees and shrub spacing, and raised planting beds and berms. The commission found that the modifications to the design standards would result in a design that is functionally equal or superior to the design prescribed by the strict adherence to the provisions of the zoning. The proposed mixed-use development approved through the land use actions and the special permit consists of approximately 800 units of housing in 3 residential towers. The project provides 29,000 square feet of ground floor retail and community facility space. A below-grade parking garage provides 496 accessory parking spaces. Rose Plaza would take advantage of inclusionary housing bonus and would provide 160 units of affordable housing, and the affordable units would be located on-site in each of the 3 buildings. The proposed development also provides a required visual corridor and 33,188 square feet of required public waterfront esplanade. The visual corridor is here, and this is the waterfront public esplanade. The project site is located along the East River waterfront in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn Community District 1. The Williamsburg Bridge is a major landmark in the area, 4 blocks north of the site, and Brooklyn Navy Yard is just 1 block south of the site. The surrounding area to the east is primarily residential and developed with medium-density residential uses, zoned R6, R7A, R7X, and R71. Community Board 1 had a public hearing on this project. The recommendations are not in your package because they just sent it to us this morning, the vote. But the Community Board approved this application with a vote of 19 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions. Market rate conditions have prevented mixed-use development to move forward, and the applicant is seeking first 3-year renewal of the special permit and authorization. The applicant states in their discussions of findings that there has been no unanticipated development in the area. Neither the project site nor its context have changed, and the project continues to meet all the findings required by the original grants of this special permit and authorization. Applicant's statement of findings is in the briefing package.
Thank you, Syed. Questions?
Yes.
Ms. Levin?
Thank you. Syed, I noticed from our report from, 2009, that 2010, there was some work that the applicant was required to do by a certain deadline that is now passed with respect to a traffic study. And
Yes.
my question is whether that's been updated, and then at that time, there was also a commitment that the applicant had made to the borough president about a number of features, unit sizes, and work at the end of division. And I'm wondering if those are probably not formal commitments, but are those commitments being fulfilled? Is it the same, is the applicant the same owner? I mean,
Yes.
is it still owned by the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding the traffic study, DEP has agreed with the applicant, like doing the study now with DOT, that it would not be beneficial to do it now. They will do it before the project proceeds, so the results could be incorporated, into whatever changes they would have to make at the intersections. Regarding their commitment, which they made to Borough President, City Council, it was a formal commitment, and it is they are committed to it to provide 10% more affordable units on the site.
Good, and to do the work on division?
Yes. Yes.
Good, because that is kind of it's a funny
Yes,
little
they are
stub of the
committed
street
to
that would be nice if they
Yes.
did what they promised they were going to do.
Yes.
Good.
Mr. Cantor?
Thank you. Syed, 2 questions. The 160 units,
Yes.
do we know how much floor area those 160 units have compared to the other 640 units? On a per
It
square
is
foot area of
20, the market rate, the total floor area is 814,700 square feet. Market rate residential is 628,523 square feet, and affordable is 157,137.
Okay, 150,000?
157,137 square feet.
160 units,
Yes,
which is roughly 1,040 units.
yes.
And the market rate?
Market rate is 682,523 square feet.
For 640 units?
Yes,
Okay. So actually, actually about the same, which is
yes.
good. Good. Second question, please. Too long on the first question, I forgot the second. Oh, yes. Is this designed under the new floodplain requirements?
Pardon me?
Does this function under the new floodplain requirements for zoning?
Yes, it was designed prior to that, but we have looked into it, and the bulk of their site is outside of the new,
Outside the higher
yes,
level?
yes.
Okay.
Some of it is.
Including the below-grade garages?
The front of the site is in the floodplain, and but they will be rebuilding the bulkhead, and and they will take appropriate measures at the time they will.
Was that contemplated in the first submission? Or is
No, that
now?
was prior to Sandy.
It was prior to Sandy, so they're upgrading to the equipment to satisfy Sandy.
Yes.
Good again, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Pataglia?
Syed, I want to congratulate you on being prepared for Erwin Cantor's first question. Very impressive. I want to just bring the commission's attention to page 66 of our package. I support this, and I love seeing affordable housing units, 160, wonderful. 66 divides the commission and professes that Ken Knuckles, myself, Erwin Cantor, Shirley McRae, and Karen Phillips voted no. I think it's erroneous.
In 2010?
Yeah.
This project was quite controversial in the community at that time.
Did we, Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't
Oh, my
remember.
goodness. So you thought you had a senior moment?
I couldn't remember what I was going to ask you.
Ms. Battaglia, you can't go home again.
Wow.
I just don't recall.
It was fun.
Thank you, Syed.
A line of reasoning that we should. Assent by show of hands to send an approval letter to DOB on this, on the renewal. Thank you very much. See that all of you who voted against it have now been converted to the
I forgot about it.
opportunities here.
Springs eternal.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let's now move to item number 3, page 73, proposed acquisition of property for continued use as a senior center in Canarsie, Brooklyn, the Abe Stark Senior Center. This is item number 3, page 73, and our presenter is Richard Jacobs of the Brooklyn office.
This is a joint application by the Department for the Aging and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services for a public facility acquisition for the Abe Stark Senior Center located at 10315 Farragut Road in the Canarsie section of Brooklyn Community District 18. Existing center has occupied the site since 1971, having its most recent acquisition approved by the City Planning Commission back in July of 1993. The action would allow for a new lease renewal and the continued use of the property as a senior center. Project site is located in an M11 zoning district, generally bounded by the New York City Transit Authority L right-of-way to the north, East 104th Street to the east, Farragut Road to the south, and East 103rd Street to the west. Immediately to the east is a vacant piece of property, M11 district, as well as a medical center operated by Staten Island University Hospital. Further east and south is a NYCHA development, Brooklyn Houses, in an R5 zoning district. Immediately south is the nursing home rehabilitative center, as well as a former nursing home that's now operating as a homeless shelter, and 2 to 3 story residences, all in an R5 district. Immediately east is a NYCHA substation, as well as the terminus of the L line in C81, the L line's rail yard. The property is a 2-story building, originally constructed as a senior center and a daycare center. The senior center is located on the ground floor of the building, approximately 10,122 square feet of floor area. The majority of seniors using the center arrive either on foot or public transportation. The facility is accessible by L subway line, which has a station on 105th Street, 1 block away from the facility. And there are numerous bus lines 1 block south on Glenwood Road. The Abe Stark Center provides services for seniors 60 years of age and older. It's open daily from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. Some of the services provided include meal service. They serve approximately 200 meals daily, social services and application assistance, social, recreational, and physical activities. I visited the site. An inspection of the building indicates that it's in good condition with regular repairs made and painting on a 3-year cycle. More extensive renovations occurred in 2001, including new double-glazed windows, new bathrooms, and kitchens, which all continue to be in good condition. So again, this is the public facility acquisition of Abe Stark Senior Center. Proposed action would facilitate a lease renewal and the continued use of the property as a senior citizen center. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Vice Chairman Knuckles and myself are perhaps the only people here who are old enough to remember the sainted Abe Stark.
Oh, you're so kind.
I say thank you also.
And his role in Dodger history. Any questions? Certified. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Let's now move to item number 4, page 94, proposed urban development action area project designation, project approval and disposition of property to facilitate a predominantly residential development, including affordable housing, Reade Street, Community District 1 in Brooklyn. Again, it's coming back. This is item number 4, page 94.
sea level rise?
Just had a flood.
Guy who hit a home run, yeah. Did you relocate?
This is an application requesting the approval of a UDEP designation, project approval, and disposition of a city-owned property. The approval of the application would facilitate the development of a mixed-use 80-story building with 51 rental units and ground floor commercial space. The subject site is located at 695 Grand Street between Manhattan Avenue and Graham Avenue in Brooklyn Community District 1. The site is occupied by a one-story commercial building that contains 2 retail stores operating on a month-to-month lease. The existing building would be demolished to facilitate the development of the new mixed-use building on the site. The site has a total lot area of 13,877 square feet with 99 feet of street frontage on Grand Street, and the depth of the lot is 140 feet. The site is primarily located in a C448 district mapped on Grand Street, but a small portion of the lot in the rear is in an R6B district. C44A is an R7A equivalent, and the maximum floor area in R7A zoning district is 4, and under inclusionary housing, the R7A district would have a base FAR of 3.45 and bonus FAR of 4.6. The applicant proposes a new 8-story building for the site with 51 rental apartments and commercial and retail space on ground floor. The building would have 49,155 square feet of residential floor area and 12,494 square feet of commercial space with a total FAR of 4.43. The proposed building would have a street wall height of 61 feet, and the maximum height of the building would be 80 feet. There would be 51 residential units on 7 floors. 41 would be affordable, 9 would be market rate, and 1 unit would be reserved for the building superintendent. Out of the 41 affordable units, 8 would be reserved for households earning less than 30% of the AMI, while the rest of the units would be for households earning up to 60% of the AMI. Additionally, there would be supportive housing for the formerly homeless single adults and families with HIV and AIDS. Supportive services would be provided off-site with occasional case managers' visit to the tenants' units. General amenities in the building would include a laundry room, a community room, and an additional patio with seating and play equipment on the second floor of the commercial building. There would also be 26 spaces for bicycle storage in the cellar. Financing of the proposed development would be provided through HPD's new construction program and the New York State Housing and Community Renewal Low-Income Tax Credits. The area surrounding the project site is predominantly residential in character with ground floor commercial uses along Grand Street and Graham Avenue. The housing stock in the neighborhood is comprised of 2 to 4-story residential buildings, zoned R6B, R6A, C44A, and R7A. 1 block south of the project site is historic landmark Williamsburg houses, a NYCHA housing complex consisting of 24-story buildings spread out over 3 large city blocks with 1,600 housing units. The area is well served by public transit and has access to G and L subway lines. Local buses B24, B43, Q54, and Q59 serve the neighborhood and connect this part of the Brooklyn to the borough of Queens. HPD is seeking approval of a UDEP designation, project approval, and the disposition of city-owned property. Upon the approval of actions, the city-owned lot would be conveyed to a developer to be selected by HPD. The approval of the proposed application will permit the development of a city-owned site that will provide much-needed affordable housing in Community District 1, Brooklyn.
Thank you, Syed. Ms. Del Toro.
Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to know about the 9 units that are market rate. How are they distributed in the building? Are they, are they integrated? Is there a separate lobby? I mean, what's the difference? And what about, the other question is, how do you distinguish them? Are they using the same materials as the affordable housing? And also the question of the market rate. What does market rate mean here? Is a market rate for the area, and do we have any idea about that? How much would that be?
The market rate units would be integrated into the building. There's only one entrance and one lobby, and 80% of the development, the units are affordable, low income and very low income, and the 9 units which would be market rate includes 3 studios, 3 1-bedroom and 3 2-bedrooms, and the rents range from $1,473 per month to $1,894 for 2-bedroom.
1,800 and,
Pardon me?
what was the last one, 1,800?
$1,894 per month for 2 bedrooms, and $1,473 for a studio, and $1,578 for a 1-bedroom. This is market rate rents they expect to get.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Battaglia.
Syed, you're knocking my socks off today. You are prepared for every question. I like this. I like this project a lot. I know the area. I know the applicant. I probably could have answered that question knowing the applicant or the not-for-profit that the market rate housing would be distributed. I like to see market rate housing when there will be a comparable number of units at 30% of AMI. That's really important, particularly for this community. I have 2 questions. One is, are all the HIV/AIDS units going to be the 30% AMI units, or will there be a distribution thereof? And the second question is, 2 businesses that exist on the site currently have month-to-month leases. Will they be, you might not know the answer, Syed, but I suspect you do. Will they be offered the opportunity to come back and conduct their businesses there once this building is redeveloped?
Applicant has told us they are in negotiation with the commercial tenants, either to relocate them or to retain them once the project is complete. Regarding the HIV/AIDS units, I'm not sure that all of them would be, offered to 30% household of 30% AMI, but I will find out.
And just so you know, I read almost every word of these packages. I noticed, you will laugh at this, Fred, that the parking regulations were waived, W-A-V-E-D. Why I bring that up, Mr. Chair, we all have a little sign on our placard here that you raised an issue on some time ago, Fred. I'll leave that one alone. In any event, thank you, Syed.
You're welcome.
Do you remember that?
Any other questions? If not, certified.
Thank you.
Thank you, Syed.
Let's now move to
Staten Island, a good lead-in to Commissioner Cirillo and Ms. Besser.
Let's move to item number 5, page 112, proposed zoning map amendment to establish a C12 overlay on property currently zoned R32 and R32C11 to facilitate retail development. It's item number 5, page 112, and Roselle Leader is our presenter.
afternoon. So this is a private application from John Salazzo for a zoning map amendment to establish a C12 overlay district on an interior lot with approximately 130 feet of frontage on the south side of Forest Avenue between Saunders Street and Richmond Avenue in the Mariners Harbor Elm Park area of Community District 1. The lot is currently located in 2 zoning districts. Most of it, about 80% of it, is in the R32 district, and about 90 feet on the east side is in the C11 district. The rezoning would establish a C12 overlay district across the entire property and would facilitate development of a 1-story commercial building. The surrounding area is predominantly characterized by commercial development. There are 2 main avenues in the area. Forest Avenue is a major east-west artery, and Richmond Avenue to the east is a major north-south artery. And there is low-rise commercial development in the overlay districts along both of these arteries. 3 bus routes run along Forest Avenue and 7 run along Richmond Avenue. Within the surrounding area, the existing development along these arteries, as I said, is predominantly commercial in the overlay districts. There are also large community facility uses and 1- and 2-story residential development beyond the commercial frontings and on the smaller streets in the R32 and R3A district. Across Forest Avenue to the west of the development site, starting around here, there's the C81 district, which I guess you can see more closely on that, which contains automotive-related uses. On the southern side of Forest Avenue, the block front from Saunders Street to Richmond Avenue includes the large elementary school, public elementary school, which actually wraps around the development site. Then you have 2 existing residential buildings. You have the development site itself, and to the east there is an automotive service station with a standalone convenience building. On the north side of Forest Avenue in the C11 district, there are uses such as convenience stores, nail salons, and a drive-through eating and drinking establishment in the C11 district. Along Richmond Avenue, south of the service station, you have convenience stores and laundromat uses. You also have the new 121 police precinct and 2 cemeteries. The R32 and R3A districts allow homes with a maximum FAR of 0.6 with the attic allowance and a maximum perimeter wall of 26 feet under LDGMA regulations. The C1 districts allows use groups 1 through 4 and 6. Typical retail and service establishments allowed in this district include drugstores, neighborhood grocery stores, restaurants, and professional offices. Buildings can be up to 30 feet in height or 2 stories. General retail uses require a minimum of 1 parking space for every 300 square feet of commercial floor area. The development site, Lot 21, has approximately 18,000 square feet and 130 feet of frontage. It is currently located in 2 zoning districts. It contains a vacant, this building is a vacant building formerly used for commercial, and it's in the C11 portion of the site. And on the portion of the site that's approximately 80% of the site that's only in the R32 district, you've got a boarded up vacant residential building and accessory garage. The rezoning proposal is to provide, as I said before, the C12 overlay district over the entire development site. So if approved, the existing buildings would be demolished, and a one-story, 7,000 square foot commercial building would be developed. The building is proposed to be up to 23 feet in height. There would be two 15-foot wide one-way curb cuts on Forest Avenue and parking for 24 vehicles. The minimum required 5-foot wide planting strip would be located on the west side of the property, next to the, separating it from the existing residential development. And also required a 7-foot wide landscape buffer would be provided at the Forest Avenue street line.
Thank you, Rizal. Thank you, Rizal. Questions? Ms. Besser?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The building, the proposed building is under 10,000 square feet.
Yes, it is.
Would we still be able to know more about the traffic patterns since it's in close proximity to a school and other retail centers as well as a police station?
Yes, because it's under that 10,000 foot threshold, we,
Wouldn't be included in the report?
the environmental review did not include a traffic analysis. But going forward, we'll let the applicant know.
I'd be interested in seeing that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Not certified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roselle. Let's now move to item number 6 and 7, which are actually related. The first item, item number 6, involved a proposed special permit and authorizations to facilitate the expansion of an existing church and school and accessory parking. It's item number 6, page 120. Our presenter is Barry Fisher, Staten Island.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. There are two separate projects on a site that was, until recently, owned by Gateway Cathedral. It's located near the Outer Bridge Crossing within the Special South Richmond Development District in the southern part of Staten Island. The first project involves a special permit to allow a large-scale community facility development with a group parking facility that exceeds the maximum as-of-right parking size of 225 spaces, as well as special South Richmond Development District authorizations. The second project involves only South Richmond authorizations and certifications to facilitate a 35 residential house development in the southern portion of the site. This project was before the Commission and approved, first in 1991, in order to facilitate development of the initial church, and it was constructed with 225 parking spaces. the largest hall of assembly on which the required parking space of 704 seats. The school was later added as of right, and then in 2006, the commission approved the same actions as are being applied for now to enlarge this Gateway Cathedral on this 22-acre site. That would have increased parking capacity to 941 parking spaces. This was only partly constructed. That parking facility was to accommodate a largest hall assembly of 2,500 seats, which was not constructed. Construction was begun on a separate addition to the church. In the current application, Gateway Cathedral has sold off the southern portion of its site to a residential developer. It's still vacant. They now own 16.7 acres out of the 22-acre site. And current plans for the actions before you depend on a related application, which I'll talk about next, for a subdivision which would create the 16.7 acre zoning lot. And 5.8 acres would remain for the future for the proposed residential development. The project area has residential, existing residences, detached homes on the west and east sides. North of the site fronts Boscombe Avenue. On the south side, the site fronts Richmond Valley Road. Across the street to the south are tidal wetlands. And beyond the north side is Route 440, so you have Outer Bridge crossing here, and the entrance ramp, and goes on off to the Korean Veterans Memorial Highway. And there are entrance and access points that also front this site. You can access and also come off of Route 440 East here. And similarly, if you cross the highway on Tyrell Avenue, which also fronts the site, you can access the westbound side of the highway. Oh, okay. All right, I'll just stay here for now, at least. The site fronts 760 feet of Boscombe Avenue and a little bit more of Richmond Valley Road on the south side, and it has about 1,400 feet of depth. And it is in an R3X zoning district within special area LL, which requires a slightly larger minimum lot size. The church at the Gateway operates an existing church and school on the northern two-thirds portion of this lot, and it uses those two curb cuts on Boscombe Avenue, and this 16.7 acre site has almost about 50 feet of elevation change. It slopes up as you go north. And it has 931 trees. And no portion of this site is in a FEMA flood zone. The applicant proposes to increase the floor area of the existing church. Let's see if this works. To increase the floor area of the existing church in order to construct an 1,800-seat largest hall of assembly. So the church would be enlarged by 57,000 square feet, and the school would be enlarged by 12,000 square feet. The parking would increase from its current 422 parking space capacity to 618 parking spaces. There would be removal of trees on the site but also 144 trees will be planted to meet parking area regulations that are pursuant to South Richmond. The applicant also proposes a new ball field with a running track, children's playground, 2,400 square foot maintenance building. A portion of the parking would be covered by a canopy that has solar panels on top, so you would be able to park underneath what would look like a roof when you park under it, but on top it would have solar panels generating solar electricity. The proposed parking exceeds the required parking as the applicant needs it for school and church functions. The required parking is 185 spaces versus the 618 being proposed. The applicant requests a special permit for accessory group parking facilities for large community facility developments, and it would exceed that as a right maximum of 225 and provide 618. It's actually a smaller proposed largest hall of assembly, and the parking area is actually smaller than what was originally proposed in 2006 in the prior CPC application. However, it's being treated as a new application because now the church is dealing with a 16.7 acre zoning lot, which is different from what was in the original proposal. And again, this parking is to provide for a largest hall of assembly with 1,800 seats. The church would keep its current largest hall, but it would no longer be used primarily for worship service. It would be used primarily as a gym. And part of this project involves finishing a chapel that would be used for weddings and funerals. The site
multi-purpose facility.
So there are also 3 special South Richmond development authorizations. In South Richmond, the trees are protected by zoning as well as the existing topography. While one can develop a site as of right and remove trees within proposed buildings footprints and with 8 feet of proposed building footprints, and as well as parking and driveways, they require authorization to remove trees outside of those areas. So this applicant is requesting authorization to remove trees within the proposed ball field. So 509 trees will be retained out of the 931 on the site. And the applicant also proposes a modification of topography, again, to allow this ball field. The as of right disturbance of natural topography is 2 feet cut or fill. The applicant proposed up to 7 feet of cut to create the level ball field on this sloping site. And an authorization to modify group parking facilities with over 30 spaces is also required in South Richmond District, which the applicant requests. Within that authorization, the commission can also alter landscaping requirements that are required for group parking facilities. And the applicant requests to not require bioswales in those areas where there are existing trees. And in particular, is a heavily wooded buffer already on Boscombe Avenue and existing landscaped islands on the site. So the applicant would use those to help meet landscaping requirements and leave those trees unaltered.
Thank you, Barry. Maybe we should do Taurus Loop now as well, and then we'll ask questions about both together.
Okay.
Taurus Loop is on page 146. It involves post-authorization to facilitate zoning lot subdivision and 2 family detached homes. There are also city plan commission certifications involved in that.
Okay. So ordinarily, since this application only involves South Richmond Development District authorizations and certifications, it would not be presented at review session. However, it is related to the Gateway Cathedral ULURP project. And so I will give in a presentation on that site. There is a vacant site that slopes in elevation from roughly 2 feet up to 50 feet. It is south of the existing and proposed to be enlarged Gateway Cathedral. The site has a portion of it, while it's entirely outside the existing FEMA flood zone, a portion of the site is within the preliminary firm maps with a flood elevation of 13 feet. So the applicant is dealing with that in terms of resiliency. The site is a hilly site, and it fronts only Richmond Valley Road. The applicant proposes 35 detached two-family homes to be accessed by a private road network, Therese Lope and Frisione Lane, and utilize 3 new curb cuts on Richmond Valley Road. Richmond Valley Road would be widened by the applicant, and also proposed are sidewalks and street trees on along the street and private roads that are proposed, as well as a 6-foot easement to allow a pedestrian link to the Gateway Cathedral that's north of the site. Out of 35 homes, 2 are proposed within the preliminary flood zone, and the first floor elevations, as well as the surrounding terrain of these 2 homes, will be elevated to 2 feet above the flood elevation for resiliency. As with the other site, the applicant is requesting authorizations for removal of trees and modification of topography. And there is an extensive cut proposed on the eastern portion of the site, and there will be a retaining wall up to 19 feet high that will be set back from the property lines of the adjacent homes by 3 to 7 feet in order to preserve adjacent topography. Now, in South Richmond, there is a requirement for commission certification for a zoning lot subdivision, and so one of the applications is for zoning lot subdivision in order to create a zoning lot for the Gateway Cathedral, and primarily separate zoning lots, 1 per home, except there are 2 zoning lots that have more than 1 home. One zoning lot will have 3 homes on a single zoning lot, and the other proposed zoning lot will have 2 homes, and that's in order to meet minimum lot requirements and minimum street requirements for given the orientation of the roadway. Lastly, there is a chairman certification for school seats, and this is to make sure that there's enough school capacity for potential new residents, and that requirement is met.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, questions? Mr. Cantor.
Sir.
And we'll entertain questions on both Gateway and Taurus Loop.
With respect to what you were just speaking to, you have a 19-foot retaining wall between 3 and 7 feet away from other people's property?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's pretty heavy duty, okay? My second question, going back to the original, is the applicant providing us with a traffic study?
That is part of the environmental review, and it was found to have no impact,
Was
which is the
determined to have
same.
no impact?
Which is the same. Yeah, it's certainly.
600 some odd cars?
Sorry.
600 some odd cars coming out of the church on a Sunday would have no impact versus what if they have 100 some odd cars previously? And we're
Right.
being told it has no impact?
Actually, if you recall, the original approval was for a much larger church, a much larger parking lot. So, and actually, it was looking at 3 different curb cuts, 2 to the north and 1 to the south.
Len, why don't you go to the mic?
So the original approval that the commission approved, and actually Barry can point it out, it had included 3 curb cuts, 2 to the north off of Boscombe and 1 to the south of Virgin Valley Road. And that analyzed the much larger parking lot and the much larger assembly hall. This one actually is a smaller parking lot due to the smaller parking requirement to the smaller church that's being proposed. And it also is only going to be having access to on Boscombe itself. So there's not going to be access to the 3rd curb cut because residential site is now precluding that.
So what you're saying, Len, did we approve the prior application with that clearance, so to speak, from the traffic study?
Yes,
So this is a lesser impediment?
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on either application? Okay, hearing none. So Gateway is certified, and Taurus Loop will send out to the community board for 45-day referral. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Sorry.
Ms. Della Uz.
I'm just wondering, do we know that the community board will have a chance to review it since it's the summer?
They are planning a special meeting for
Okay.
this project, these 2 projects.
Great.
Okay, refer it out.
Sorry.
Your question will be permitted.
Thank you, sorry. Thank you.
Let's
We'll review it. We'll be on vacation.
Let's go to item number 8, page 169. Proposed special permit to facilitate retail use in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District for property located at 155 Mercer Street. It's our first pre-hearing application. Rich Suarez is our presenter. That's item number 8, page 169.
You should give.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
I feel like I saw this.
This is a private application for a special permit pursuant to Section 74.711 of the zoning resolution to allow use group 6 retail use on the ground and cellar levels of an existing 3-story building at 155 Mercer Street in Soho. This application is returning for a public hearing following review by Manhattan Community Board 2, the Manhattan Borough President. 155 Mercer Street is located on the west side of Mercer Street between Prince and Houston Streets in the Soho neighborhood of Community Board 2. This map is a little off, but north is up. That's south, and 155 Mercer is right there on Mercer between West Houston and Prince, and Broadway is just 1 block to the east. The site is improved with a 3-story mezzanine level building that was constructed in 1853 and has existing FAR of 2.52. The building was most recently used or occupied by the Joyce Soho Dance Studio, but is currently vacant. Although not individually landmarked, the site is located in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, which was designated in 1973, and is listed as a contributing structure to the architectural and historic character of the area. The site was home to the first headquarters of the Center of Administration for the city's volunteer fire department and was aptly named Fireman's Hall. The building was modernized in the 1920s and to accommodate wide apparatus doors, and by 1980, all the ornamental facades elements of the facade had been removed. The site is located in the M15A zoning district, which allows many commercial and high-performance manufacturing uses, as well as joint living and working quarters, but limits the ground floor and cellar uses to repair, maintenance, semi-industrial, and high-performance manufacturing uses for buildings that occupy more than 3,600 square feet of lot area. All other uses, including use group 6 retail, are not permitted below the floor level of the 2nd story unless by special permit by the City Planning Commission. Buildings that occupy less than 3,600 square feet of lot area can locate these uses on the ground floor as of right, which represents about 70% of all buildings in the M15A zoning district. The building at 155 Mercer Street has a lot area of 3,857 square feet. In order to allow use group 6 retail uses on the ground and cellar levels of the building, the applicant seeks a special permit pursuant to section 74711 to modify the use requirements of the M15A zoning district for a building occupying more than 3,600 square feet of lot area. Section 74711 allows the commission to permit modifications of use and bulk regulations for zoning lots with existing buildings within historic districts, provided that a continued maintenance program has been established and accepted by LPC, that the changes will contribute to a preservation purpose. The special permit will facilitate the conversion of the vacant building at 155 Mercer Street to a 3-story and cellar clothing retail store, as well as restoration of the building facade to incorporate the architectural details of the former volunteer fire station that have been removed over the past 60 years. This is a proposed rendering of the building if approved. On April 24th, 2014, Manhattan Community Board 2 voted to issue a resolution by a vote of 38-0 with 0 abstentions, stating no objection to the requested special permit. Although the board recognized the special permit only concerns the location for allowing use group 6 retail on the ground and cellar levels of the building, they expressed concerns about the expansion of the Broadway retail atmosphere onto narrow Soho streets and would prefer the conversion of the upper stories to other uses. The Manhattan Borough President on June 19th issued a recommendation to approve the application. We submitted the recommendation separately from the package, which you should have received over the weekend. She shares in the community board's concerns that the project falls just under the zoning square footage necessary to be considered a large-scale retail establishment, and has concerns as to how the necessary loading of merchandise will impact the traffic and pedestrian flow on Mercer Street, which is a narrow side street. She writes that the project lends itself to the trend of locating large flagship retail stores in the area that has the potential to have a cumulative negative impact on transportation, the character of the neighborhood, quality of life, and the vitality of retail diversity. We expect at least 4 speakers on Wednesday, the applicant's representative, the project architect, and a representative from the community board and from the borough president's office. Thanks.
Just to confirm, the borough president voted to approve because the application
Yes.
Those were comments.
Yes, so yeah, both the community board and the borough president recommended approval, and they found that the application did meet the requirements for 74711.
Thank you. Questions in advance of the hearing? No questions? See you Wednesday.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Let's now move to item number 9, page 195. It's a proposed city map amendment to facilitate parkland along Grant Avenue in the Bronx. Our presenter is Philip Montgomery. Item number 5, page 195, our second pre-hearing application.
Good afternoon. Returning for pre-hearing reviews an application by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation seeking an amendment to the city map in order to facilitate the establishment of a community park in the Bronx Community District 4. As you may recall, the proposed action seeks the mapping of existing parkland and the elimination, discontinuance, and closing of a portion of Grant Avenue in order to establish a community park on one contiguous parcel of land comprised of the eliminated street bed and 16 adjoined city-owned lots that are currently under the jurisdiction of parks. The subject portion of Grant Avenue is city-owned. It's mapped to a width of 60 feet. It's open and in use. It contains a one-way southbound travel lane, parking lanes on both sides, and 15-foot sidewalks. Adjacent to Grant Avenue here are 16 mostly vacant lots owned by the city and under the jurisdiction of parks. The lots are vacant and closed off from the public with the exception of 2 parks, one park here and one park here. These are known as Grant Park, and there's also a community garden that's located here. These parks contain playground equipment, swings, benches, a basketball court, and a short walking track. While city-owned and maintained by the Parks Department, these areas are not currently mapped as parkland. When completed, the 4.7-acre park will contain both passive and active recreation areas. The proposed facilities include a dog run, a comfort station, an adult exercise area, an active play lawn, handball and basketball courts, and an amphitheater with a seasonal spray shower. By a vote of 29 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions, Community Board 4 voted to approve the application, and the Borough President's Office also approved the application without conditions.
Thank you. Any questions in advance of Wednesday's hearing? How many speakers do we anticipate? Oh, Ms. Levin, sorry.
Yeah, I just wondered about, the borough president expressed concern in his application about the status of funding for the full build-out of the park. And are we likely to hear anything more about that on Wednesday?
Yes, Parks will be here to answer any questions related to that.
Okay, good.
Any other questions? See you Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Let's now move on to our future votes. Our staff have prepared favorable resolutions for the following. 1337 Jerome Avenue, which involves the proposed disposition of city-owned property. We have a favorable report with modifications as discussed in previous review sessions. We have the IHOP restaurant expansion in Brooklyn, the modification of existing restrictive deck. We have the downtown Brooklyn city map modification, the Park Avenue Historic District proposal, the Brighton Avenue authorization, which involves an authorization of the Special Hillside District to facilitate a single-family home, 121 Circle Road, certification to facilitate 2 single-family homes in the Special Natural Area District, 24 Benedict Road, certification to facilitate enlargement to an existing home in the Special South Richmond District, 246 Douglas Road, certification to facilitate enlargement to a single-family home in the Special Natural Area District, and 105 Petrus Avenue, certification for subdivision to facilitate 2 residences in the Special South Richmond Development District. On July 9th, the proposal for the Woodward Avenue rezoning is anticipated. We have a proposal that proposes a rezoning from M11 to R6B, R6B C13, and R5B to facilitate predominantly residential development. Commissioners, you received a letter responding to some of the concerns that were raised at the public hearing by the applicant, and Tom will summarize that letter for us.
Good afternoon. As Jackie said, you received a letter in your packages. Actually, since that letter was received on Friday, or late on Thursday, there have been a number of developments. The applicant has been in contact with city planning as well as HPD and the mayor's office. And then they have agreed to work with us in a follow-up action that would include the mapping or a text amendment that would add this area for the R6B Inclusionary District, and that they would be able to work with that under the 2.2 FAR to provide affordable housing. So that kind of covers that entire first section of the letter that you received in your packages. But moving on, as to the uses to be allowed, as the applicant said, they were perfectly willing to accept the modification from the commission to change the proposed C13 to a C23. The C23 district would allow a certain greater flexibility of uses in the area. It would not truly allow for true light manufacturing, but it does allow for repair uses and skilled trades, such as glazers, upholsterers, smaller kind of trade activities like that. But it would also allow for new jobs to be created that would pay higher salaries than what you would just get in a general retail shop. Moving on, for the parking question, they stated that they had provided all of the 118 accessory parking spaces at the behest of the community board, and that is very much true. I know for a fact that Community Board 5 is very pro-parking. This is a fairly auto-dependent area, so they were telling the truth, and I know the board well, and they did exactly what was asked of them to do. As for the on-street parking issue, along Troutman Street, all of these are 3-unit buildings. You do have some shortage of parking on Troutman, but on Star and a lot of the other surrounding blocks, there isn't really too much of a shortage. But again, Community Board 5 is very sensitive to any shortage of parking on street, so they were just responding to that. We've asked, you asked, and we followed up with the IBZ manager for, the unofficial IBZ manager for the Soma area, Ted Renz, who spoke. He is following up with the IBZ manager of Maspeth to get numbers on the occupancy and the breakdown of uses within the manufacturing areas. But we should receive those shortly, but I can, upside down. From past experience in the area, I can speak to some of the breakdown of industrial uses or manufacturing uses. Really, in the southern section of the Maspeth IBZ, the vast majority of the uses are distribution. They aren't actual manufacturers. There are more manufacturers in the northern section, closer to Long Island City, but really in the southern area, it's really just distributors, warehouses, scrap yards, and contractors' yards. So there really isn't very much manufacturing occurring. Also in the area, there was a vacant, very large property with an existing manufacturing building. I believe it was a glass blowing plant at one point that had sat vacant for several decades. And the only tenant that they were able to find was a event space that hosts musical performances. So this was a fully functional building that was ready to go on a very large site that could have been renovated, but the desire wasn't there. As for the Ridgewood IBZ, they do have a significant amount of small manufacturers. They've actually brought back in a number of small knitting mills. But as Ted said, there are also still vacancies. There are some fairly large open properties that are having trouble finding tenants. As for secondary displacement, which was brought up by a few of the speakers, council member, the gentleman who brought in the petition, that issue was examined as part of the environmental assessment. And since this project is simply so small, it completely screened out. So by seeker standards, it wasn't even something to be analyzed. And this is a very small project. As for the demographics, we were able to pull together some information on the gross median rent and gross median income in the area. So in the Ridgewood neighborhood tabulation area, which is basically a good approximation of the Ridgewood boundaries themselves, the median household income is $48,193, and the median gross rent is $1,028. But that is spread across about 10 different census tracts. The census tract that this development actually sits in, the median gross rent is $1,315, so it's on the higher end of the spectrum for the neighborhood, and the median household income is about $60,000. And that kind of carries for the next adjoining two census tracts. So this is a somewhat more affluent section of the Ridgewood area. And that's what we've been able to find thus far.
Questions for Tom?
Yes, please.
Mr. Cantor.
Tom Height. A couple of questions, please. Forgive me, I left the letter in the other room.
Sure.
They've gone from 2 to 2.2. Now, there was a 2.2 to 2.6, is it?
They had, at the hearing, they suggested that a follow-up action have a floor area ratio of 2.4 to 2.5.
2.425.
But they have agreed with us and HPD that the 2.2, which is currently in the zoning resolution, if they had sought for the text amendment to expand the boundaries of the inclusionary area, that's what they would have received.
The 2.2.
2.2.
Okay. Now, does the, how do I put it? Does the is there any community facility area in that 2.2?
Yes, you would be allowed.
Are they deducting the community facility area when they compute the 20% which they've offered?
I don't believe so, possibly.
Commissioner, the standard inclusionary provisions are that if you have ground floor retail or other ground floor uses.
You can take that out.
You can take that out.
Okay.
And that's what this would be, just on the ground floor.
But they're still offering the 20%
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
with the follow-up action.
with the follow-up action. Now, I ought to always ask the last question first because I forget it. Yes, the question I asked earlier on that, the Rose application, what is the percentage of floor area that's going to be assigned to this, quote, 20% affordable housing as opposed to the gross floor area that's going to be assigned to the market rate housing? Is the question clear?
Not to me. I mean,
Earlier today, well, here's my question. You can assign, you can assign units or you can assign area?
It's by
It's by area. It's by area.
Okay. So is the area, the 20% area proportion,
Yeah.
is going to give us how many units?
Oh. Yeah, we'd have to do the fall, but I would,
Right, but we've done the back of the envelope
Yeah.
calculations here based on the 88 units proposed, that you'd get roughly 17 units of affordable housing.
yeah.
With 20% of the FAR?
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Deluz?
So was there a timetable committed to for the follow-up action that we're aware of at this time?
They would like us to move as quickly as possible, but no, timetable has not been set for the follow-up action to occur. But it would be a simpler process than if they were to ask for a higher FAR. The environmental is similar to what they've already worked through, and the 2.2 is similar to what was already approved by the community boards and borough president. So it might not be as long a process.
Ms. Deluz?
So do we know if their intention is to move forward with development prior to the follow-up action actually commencing?
No, their commitment, as was previously stated in their letter, still that they want to work with us on a follow-up action.
Okay, just checking, great.
Ms. Levin?
Yes, Tom, on the expanded commercial uses.
Yes.
They essentially invited us to modify the application.
Yes.
They did.
Are we going to modify the application?
I believe we will be modifying the application.
Seems like that would
Yeah,
be
we
a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of doing that.
We're all good, yeah, I think.
Thumbs up on
Yeah. They like it.
Good.
Like it, yeah.
We have to all just get along, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that what you guys say?
We have to try. We
Yeah,
have to
but
try.
no, we have to be nice to each other.
Well, that's
We have to
harder.
play nice. We have
Yeah,
to play
yeah,
nice.
We have to play
So-
nice.
Ms. Battaglia?
Tom, I want to thank you for all the information provided today. It's really helpful. And I just want to reaffirm that the parking, which I endorse, is not just random parking for someone riding up the street, but it will first be offered as accessory to
Yes.
people who live in those buildings. And those spaces that then become available as a result of them not being taken by the residents will be offered only either monthly or a minimum of weekly.
Weekly, yep.
So, and the other thing I just want to say is I passed by the site again today. I took a really good look at it. I slowed down, making me late again. But the site really needs to be improved.
Yes.
And I did notice whether or not they were exactly on this site, but the surrounding sites, I mean, they're all barbed wired sites. It's really so unsightly. But there were for rent signs all over the place in that area, and nothing is being done. So I'm glad to see that there will be some changes, there will be a future action. I'm hoping this goes through, because I really think it's important for that area and for the people who live there, people who will live there. Thanks.
Let me just add, I was personally actually disappointed with the letter that we got from the applicant last week, but I'm heartened by what's happened over the last 72 hours. And I think there still are issues we probably have to nail down, particularly with respect to timing and to assure that, in fact, this proceeds as in its entirety as I think envisioned. But I will get back in touch with all of you well in advance of the July 9th vote with a little more specifics, and I appreciate many of you who had noted that if we are to rezone this site, which, as Ms. Pataglia said, really cries out for a change of land use, it should be accompanied by some affordable housing, and I think this is very much a step in the right direction. So I'm encouraged. I don't think we're quite there, but it looks like we're close to there. So thank you all. And thank you to Tom and to John.
And Commissioners, we will be preparing favorable reports for July 9th for both the Fordham Road bid expansion as well as the West Shore bid.
Jack? Great. On the West Shore bid, the issue was about Parks coming to ask us for a seat at the table, which I thought was kind of an odd development between city agencies. Are we going to be able to confirm that they have a seat at the table?
I think what's happening is they're working with the bid to try and figure out what the best form will be for them to work.
How big that seat might be?
Yeah, how to work with them.
Okay, we can send them to talk to the guy on Woodward Avenue about being nice to each other.
Could help.
I'd be in favor of having that reflected in our report.
I think sitting at the same table almost always helps. Not always, but it always generally helps. And I'm hopeful that that will be the result here. And with that, meeting is adjourned.
How long a
Thank
day,
you all.
Jackie?